And welcome everybody for real this time to an episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung. I am joined by Eric Wiedeke. I am joined by Ron Caniff. For those of you who are wondering, we're actually 5 minutes late today. The reasoning behind that, and actually Jason Stamps, Fins up. Yes, sir. I have words for you, sir. I have words for you, but I'll get into that in just a second. First, I have to tell this story. We actually had been talking for about 5 minutes, which is why we're late today. And I did not realize I played the timer and everything. The countdown went, and I did not push the button to go live. So we were just talking, and there was a lot of good content that just got lost, because sometimes the funniest parts of the show is the stuff that has nothing to do with the show. But with that being said, since Mr. Stamps is in the YouTube chat, I just have to point out, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a jersey today, it is because I received a package in the mail a few weeks ago of this jersey of a certain Miami Dolphins player, and I just felt it was very appropriate today, given where we are in this Miami Dolphins situation where we can't get a pass rush to save our lives. The players that are there, who are supposed to be pretty good, can't seem to get the job done. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jason Stamps sent me in the mail one Dion Jordan jersey.
It's actually a nice looking jersey, except for the name and number.
Except for the person who the jersey belongs to. Yes.
Exactly.
Although at this point, I feel like I'd be willing to take Dion Jordan, just because we can't, we're so low right now in our sack totals. It's not even funny. I'm hoping that the news about Bradley Chubb and Cameron Good coming back to practice means that we're actually going to be able to get some sort of a pass rush. I'm not saying Bradley Chubb is Jalen Phillips or anything, but doggone it, man, we got to get something going here, especially if we're going to now make the attempt to win out, which guess what? We basically have to do that now. Like 9-8, it's not impossible, but doggone it, we need everything to go right. And when has Miami ever been that lucky? So we're going to get into everything that we've been checking out over the past few days. We'll talk about the Packers game. We'll talk about some rumors that have been going around. And believe me, I've got words about these unsubstantiated claims that have been going around the Twitterverse and basically are banned to speak of in the OnlyFins Discord server because they're that stupid. But we'll get into all that in a few minutes. First, we want to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you by our good friends over at ThompsonCigar.com. Use the promo code 3YARDS, that's 3 YARDS, and you will get 20% off your entire order over $75. Again, that is ThompsonCigar.com, promo code 3YARDS. You will get 20% off your entire order over $75. So if you're somebody who needs a good cigar, especially for those of you who were watching on Thanksgiving Day, kind of like I was, in my fiance's parents' house, because we were there for Thanksgiving, and I watched the game, and it wasn't fun. It was not fun. Mind you, I'm watching the Miami Dolphins actually move the ball. Tua is playing well. No, was he perfect? Doggone it. No, he missed a couple of throws. Obviously, he was not perfect, because if he were perfect, no, we still would have lost that game, even if he were perfect, because there weren't that many mistakes to point out except for the missed throws that he made. So aside from that, what else can you do? I don't know what else that you gotta expect from Tua in order for the Dolphins offense to be firing on all cylinders. At some point, some other players are going to have to do something. At some point, some other coaches are going to have to do something, and we'll get into all that. First, Eric, I wanted to go ahead and give the floor to you, because as we mentioned before we got started, and I'm not going to try to rehash that joke, but Eric was doing some lunch break calculations at work, and I wanted to make sure that he got his point across. So Eric, I give you the floor.
So I hate to be disappointing, Lewis. I actually hadn't gotten to the Dolphins Packers game in my note taking just yet. It was really tracking. I was through probably late last season to this point. I haven't gotten all the way through this season.
But was there enough to see a pattern?
Is this
the
time?
So or? Going through the games against winning teams, essentially, trying to find patterns there. What has worked, what didn't work, what some of the common themes are. So the biggest thing that you saw in this game here was there are two themes, and this is the first theme is something that goes beyond Mike McDaniel. Really, it's been happening to Dolphins teams since probably longer than I've been alive at this point. And that is I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind of mental toughness the team is going to have to embrace. But I have never, ever, ever, ever seen a professional football team let bad things just snowball as much as the Miami Dolphins do. I mean, it's never just one mistake. The mistakes come in like threes or fours. It's one mistake and then another mistake after that and then another mistake after that. And by the time you look up, you're down 17-0 in the first quarter and the game's over. And that's the biggest thing, I think, that really killed them against Green Bay, because you put yourself into a position where Green Bay just was going to be able to hand it off to Josh Jacobs pretty much as they wanted to, and coast. Obviously, Jordan Love is very effective himself, and the secondary wasn't very good. I don't think any part of the defense was really very good on Thursday night. But when you let them play with a lead like that, they're kind of playing with house money. And then meanwhile, the offense, we went into this game talking about what the offense could do in Green Bay. And they did a lot of the things that we said that they could do in Green Bay. The problem is the things that they can take to cold weather are not things that are necessarily conducive to coming back from a large deficit. That's the kind of offense, the long sustained drives, the short passing game. Those are all things that keeps a game close when a game's already close. It's not something that you can come back from 14 down with. Now, granted, they were in a position to make it a game in the third quarter. But again, another thing that we see, particularly with this era of Miami Dolphins football, we can't get around it. You get to the 2-yard line. You hand it off once, and then you abandon the idea of running the football again. And I don't know what it's going to take to get to a point where that's just not the case anymore. Now, the other thing that I was talking about with Lewis was, I understand that the Dolphins missed 20 tackles on Thursday night, and they can never tackle very well, particularly in the cold. That's the one cold weather thing that I think is legit about the team, is the tackling for some reason just never works out in the cold. But, it's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to tackle when you're trying to tackle, 6 foot, 225 pound Josh Jacobs. And again, I love Devon Achane. I love him, but it's a lot easier to tackle 5'8", 190 pound Devon Achane in that cold weather. It's a different level of physicality. It doesn't punish the defense as much as what Green Bay was able to do, where they're able to just hit you and hit you and hit you again and just break down the defense. And the Dolphins don't have that kind of running back. I go back to the recent history of, you look at two of the biggest wins in cold weather in recent Dolphins history, at Buffalo, at Pittsburgh, both in 2016. You know what the common theme is there? Jay Ajayi, a big, bruising running back that can punish the defense, break down those defenders, because it hurts to tackle in the cold, and you got to make it hurt. And that's part of the physicality thing that I think that this team just doesn't have. And I don't think that it's about the cold weather necessarily. I think it's about playing good teams more than anything, because they lose this game in 75-degree weather too. But if they're going to play in the conditions specifically, I don't see how you get around having I compare the Dolphins kind of to the Lions, because I love everything that the Lions do. They have their Jahmyr Gibbs. I want a David Montgomery. That's what I want for the Dolphins offense. And I think it could go a long way to completing the Dolphins offense, particularly when it comes to playing in these games in the elements.
Do you think? Well, here's the question then that we have to ask: can Jalen Wright eventually become that guy? Because he runs really hard. It's just that he runs into walls because he doesn't find holes very well. I'm hoping that given time, he'll actually be able to become that person, because that's what you're right. That's what Miami's missing. We have all the lightning in the world. We have no thunder. There's no thunder. We don't have a bulldozer. We need a bulldozer. And I'm not, we brought this up during work, and I still believe this. We can get away with not having a bulldozer at running back. And I know, listen, I love Coach Eric. I really do. He's been taking a lot of heat these past few days about the offensive line and whether it's good or not. And he'll have his evaluations. I can disagree with him. We have the right to be able to disagree. We're not everybody who is here at the 5 Reasons Sports Network necessarily agrees with what everybody else has to say. We all have our opinions. I understand where he's coming from a film perspective. I still think he's wrong. I just really do. I don't think this offensive line is good enough. And you can nitpick the assignments. You can nitpick the roles that are supposed to be played. You can nitpick all of that, all you want. And you can justify things, and you can defend things, and you can look at it from any perspective you like. All I know is that when it comes to running the football, it's bizarre that we now had to rely on Austin Jackson to be able to run the ball. Like, Austin Jackson was the linchpin to the offensive line. Is that scary or what? It really is scary to think about that. He was the reason why running the football was possible. I can't fathom that. But even if that is the case, where are your guards? Your guards are supposed to be the big bruising, like, guys who just run forward and just hit the guy in front of them and be stronger than the other guy. They're not doing that. The reason why, I truly believe this, I feel like Mike McDaniel, for better or worse, has no faith in his running game to push anybody. He always has to go around everybody. He has to try to do a jet sweep here. He's got to do a pitch over here, and he's got to do an outside zone run here, trying to get around the right tackle and trying to get around the defense. They can't go forward because there's no push. As great as Aaron Brewer has been, he deserves every bit of praise. He's not designed to be a bruiser. That wasn't his job. He was there to be a zone blocking center. Okay, cool, fine. But you need guys who can push. You need guys who can shove. You need big bruising bulldozers. And you need to be able to use them and go forward for 1 yard. Dolphins haven't been able to do that for years, not since the Jay Ajayi years, which you mentioned, because Jay Ajayi himself was a bulldozer. If you don't have a bulldozer back, you need bulldozer guards. I really believe that. I understand where Coach Eric comes from, and I love the guy very much, and I welcome him to be on the show anytime he wants. But I can't agree with him with this offensive line and this guard play. I just can't. Liam Eichenberg is not good enough. Robert Jones is not good enough. And not only that, they're not strong enough. You need to be able, I don't care what the scheme dictates. When you need first and goal on the half-yard line, your guy should be able to shove the other guy hard enough that they can get into the end zone. And I don't want to hear about the QB sneaks of like, oh, you don't want it. Tua's head is made of paper mache, so you don't want him to do the QB sneak. If you're so worried about Tua doing a QB sneak, send Alec Ingold in there under center and just let him run it in. What difference does it make?
Hear me out. Calais Campbell QB sneak.
Sure. I mean,
6'7", 300. That dude's
anyone, and literally anyone who doesn't see the QB sneak coming when they do it. Who doesn't know when it's coming? Why does it have to be Tua? It can be anybody. They can't do it. And they know they can't do it. Like, I keep hearing about this QB sneak stuff. Ron, when you see Tom Brady go under center, do you know what he's about to do?
Yeah.
Can they stop him?
No. I think he was stopped once in like 20 years.
That's my point. It's like Tua's head is paper mache. Okay, you want him to sneak? Anybody can sneak. Who cares who it is? You can't push. That's the problem. Then that comes with offensive line. It's not Tua's fault that he doesn't QB sneak. What difference does it make? You really want to sneak that bad? Throw Tyler Huntley in there for one play. Throw a running back under center. Do the Wildcat. That we had a whole season dedicated to the Wildcat. That's what it's for. So I don't want to hear about that kind of stuff because it just makes me mad. It's like, oh, Tua can't sneak. So anybody can do that. And even when they do it, you know it's coming. Can your offensive line push for that 1 yard that you're trying to sneak for? If the answer is no, you're wasting your time. That's where I get with this, because that's where I understand where Mike McDaniel comes from about he abandons the run so quickly when it's short yardage, because I don't trust those guys to get 2 yards. I don't. I trust these guys to get big chunk yards when there's a lot of space for them to work with. But once you get up in that red zone area, suddenly the space is limited. And that's when you need to be able to shove. They can't shove. And that's where I get from. Ron, I'm sure you had your own thoughts about what you saw on Thursday. And so I'm going to go ahead and let you get your say.
A couple of things. I want to go back to what Eric was talking about the mistakes. I agree. You saw a team, 2 minutes and 17 seconds into the game. You saw Malik Washington reaching for the ball instead of bringing his body over to catch it. I think we heard, I can't remember, the old coach of the Cowboys that was commentating the game. So
is it Jason Garrett?
Jason Garrett, yeah. You got to catch with your feet, move the ball. First time I heard that expression, but the second he said, I knew exactly what he meant, because we saw the opposite of Malik Washington. And then it was mistake after mistake. And you and I, Lewis, have talked a lot about, is this team's not, is it a toughness problem? Is it a physicality problem? And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it and people are going to react kind of, oh, I don't like it, I don't want to hear it, or you're right or you're wrong. It's a leadership problem, and I don't mean coaches. The team doesn't have enough alpha male dogs, and I don't necessarily mean players who aren't good. We have a lot of very good players on this team. It's why we win more than we lose generally. I know this year we haven't, but it's why we win more than we lose. And we would have won more than we lost had we not lost Tua during that period of time, I believe anyway. I think we'd still be, right there along with the Broncos probably fighting for that last spot. We just don't have. I just don't think we have enough guys. And here's the thing: you have a guy who's probably maybe he's the leader of the defense. It kind of, when you see all the locker room stuff and you hear everything,
he's the guy who goes up to the podium, not Steeler.
A month before the season, that shows you right then and there. There's a leadership void on the team. I believe Tua's a leader, but he can't be the only leader, and I don't think he's not a Tom Brady. He hasn't done it yet where everybody really just falls in line behind him with everything he says. They're just not there.
Ron,
they are with others. So you need other guys. And when somebody can just come in 38, 39 years old, off the street a month before the season starts or whatever it was, and suddenly he's like the leader of your defense and almost the leader of your team, that's just proof right there. You have a leadership void in the team. So how does that lead to the things that we see? These guys just get in their heads too much, and there's not enough good leadership on the team to get these younger guys and some of these players out of their head. They put it. I can't use the words I want to use, but there's a something that is said in the 40-year-old version about putting it, and I won't say what it is, up on the pedestal, and you're building it up too high. I saw the team doing this all week, like they were building this game up too much, and they were just too much in their head, and then they start to make mistakes, and there's just not enough leadership to pull them out of that. They go in halftime, they come back, they look like a different team because they get their mind around it, but they can't seem to do it in game because they're just too caught up on everything.
Yeah, that special teams play, Ron, was basically a killer right out the gate.
Danny Crossman, if he's not fired, I don't know. If he's not fired at the end of the season, I don't know what to say anymore. But I don't even want to talk about it. It's just so ridiculous. But they need more players who can get these guys calmed down and that these players can look up to, the younger guys can look up to, the less experienced guys can look up to, the guys who don't have playoff wins in their history can look up to. They just need more players like that, more guys like that on this team, more Campbells on this team. Whether they're the best players or not may not always matter, but that's what this team needs, I think, more than anything. They don't have a head coach that's really going to give them that. They just don't. And I like Mike McDaniel a lot, but they simply just don't have it. And Tua is, I think he's a leader, but I just don't think he's at that level, and they just don't have the guys right now. And I think that's the the big issue there. But and then
the words that I want to use, I refuse to use, not only for demonetization, but also because I want to keeping up a reputation of staying semi-family friendly. But the word that I want to use is a synonym to jerks. You need more jerks. It's not about leadership. Ron, you know where the oldest defense in the NFL?
Yeah, I know.
Well,
but a lot of that is because a couple guys are throwing that.
No. It's a lot of guys. You got Ramsey, who's 30. You've got Jordan Poyer. You got Campbell. You've got there's a whole bunch
Fuller's
of
30.
Fuller's 30. Like, you got a whole bunch of old guys on this roster. It's not about leaders and older guys who the young guys can look up to. There's plenty of old guys on this roster. I think we might be the oldest team in the league right now. So
Second.
you need a bunch of, everybody knows what I'm saying when I say this.
Jason,
you need a bunch of jerks on this team who are gonna punch the other guy in the mouth.
You need a few more of those guys, and I don't necessarily. I'm not putting this on like a player. We have good players. We have really good players. Like, we just don't have enough alpha type personalities.
You don't have enough nasty people who are going to cause trouble.
Enough, man. We need some dogs, man. We just need a couple dogs. That's all. I'm telling you, that's all this team is missing. They're just missing.
But you know who those players are, Ron?
That's
generally speaking, those guys that you're talking about also are usually the most physical of the bunch. Because that kind of attitude that you're missing is what translates onto actions on the field.
But even if you found these guys maybe in the bottom slide of their career, if they're the right guys and the right personality, we can see it makes a difference. We see it with Campbell. We need a few. We could just use a few more Campbells, even just that leadership. Like, Sealer is a better player than Campbell, but I don't see like the players huddling around him like he's an alpha male that everybody's like. He's just not. He doesn't seem to me that way. I mean, we don't see everything these guys do in the locker room. We don't have cameras and mics in the locker room 24/7 to know what goes on. So maybe I'm wrong, but we don't have that. And on offense, I don't know that we have that at all. Tyreek plays too much. I just want to just say that as sounding like some boomer ass old dude. I mean, he just plays too much. He doesn't give me that vibe of like. I know they brought him on. They thought, we want you to be a leader too, but I just don't think that's natural for him. I don't know who's that. You got TA, right? And that's probably it. So you got one dude on offense, TA. You got one dude on defense. Ramsey does it through example. I'm not sure how boisterous he is, but I mean, he's such a hustler. People respect the hell out of his play because that guy never gives up on any play ever, no matter what. You see that, and I think that's a big thing too. They need more guys like that. I think the formula is getting close. I agree with Eric. They need to add a bigger bruising back or use Jalen Wright more, but I'm not really sure that Jalen Wright is that guy that you're talking about, Eric. Lewis, they got to upgrade these guards, man. They need at least one dog at guard. They just don't. These guards aren't it, man. They're just not it.
No, and now bulldozers, big 330
we need that,
hulking guys who can move. We had a big guy in Lester Cotton. He couldn't move. We need a big guy who can move.
And then the offense is starting to really figure out, right? Because now what we see is, what's going on with the run game? What's going on in the run game? Yeah, we lost Ingle for a bit. That hurt. We've lost Austin Jackson for a year. That also hurts. But what we're seeing now is we were starting to run on teams so well where like teams are like, well, I know we were bringing the guard. I know we were bringing two safeties back and bringing the linebackers back so they can't throw on us. But we can't just let them sit there and run 150, 200 yards on us a game or we're going to lose. So now you see linebackers kind of coming up, but the two safeties are still staying back. So you're seeing all these crossers, man. Like all these crossers in the middle between the linebackers and the safeties. Linebackers and safeties. But sometimes teams are cheating. They're like, well, we can't just let them eat us up with 15-yard crossers all day. Maybe sometimes we'll bring a safety up closer. Man, they're not taking any shots. They're like almost become scared to take shots down the field. Just take some shots. Even if they're not successful, take some guys and take some shots. They're almost there, have this figured out. They don't have quite all the right pieces on offense. But mostly I just think that the difference when they get in these situations, they just don't quite have the leadership mix they need on the team. That's just my thought behind it.
The other thing that I think is not talked about as much on the perspective of the offense, and It's kind of what we see with the backup quarterbacks in the game, where the offense is extremely complicated. With this offense, at least on the first couple drives, you can open up the playbook afterwards. You need to simplify this stuff for the first couple drives so that the team can get settled in, because what will happen is you get caught up. It's Lambeau. It's loud. There's a lot of motion. You're going to commit some penalties doing that. You need to just line up, give the guys something simple, get them into the flow of the game. Then you want to open it up. You want to do the motion. You want to do all the crazy stuff that you love to do. Absolutely.
I
agree,
I think
Eric. On the first couple drives of the game, the offense has to be simplified. It has to be. And speaking of just a little bit of adding some nasty, I go back to like a month ago, and do you guys remember? It was like a viral clip of the Saints defender when he sacked Justin Herbert, pretty much tried to like twist his ankle off, and then the Chargers offensive lineman just literally like he was shoving the dude's face into the ground.
Jonnu came. Right. Okay, I saw one comment about. I want to go ahead and bring that up. Jason Stamps brought up. No one stood up for Tua when the defense was pushing his face on the ground. Not true. You know who came to his defense? Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith.
You know who got penalized for that? Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith. That was an earned. That needed to happen.
It was.
But even then, it's like, but Tua's face gets shoved in the dirt. Nothing. Jonnu actually retaliates and says, "Don't shove my quarterback." 15-yard penalty. It's like it's so bogus, man.
What happened when Trevor Lawrence got destroyed?
Yeah,
like it was almost like a
3-game suspension
over that. You know what I mean? But it was almost like a brawl over that. That's that. You got to have some. Come on, man. That's football. I understand that. Like the game's different than it used to be, but sometimes you just gotta eat the 15-yard. Like Landry did it a little too much. Jarvis Landry, he'd eat the 15 yards a bit too much.
You want to talk about
Brian
going find
Cox
a dog?
Would eat it a bit too much. But he'd make up for it on the field. Man, sometimes you just got to go get that 15-yard penalty. Hey, you don't mind getting pre-snap penalties all day at 5 yards a clip? Why don't you get an earned 15-yarder? Make it count. You know, sometimes once in a while, without being stupid, you need to do that.
You know what? If Julian Hill wants to save his spot on the team, how about he become that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody else. Nobody. Hey, he's the designated get thrown out of the game in case of emergency guy.
I remember the NBA used to have those guys. Like you knew who they were. You knew when that guy was coming off the bench back in the 90s that he was just simply going out there to foul the hell out of people and kick someone's ass and probably get kicked out of the game.
That was recent, man. How long ago did Udonis Haslem retire? That was literally his whole job. The only time UD came into the game at the tail end of his career was because he was going to cause some trouble. Like that's all he was going to do.
Yeah, so just once in a while you need that. I think there's a lot to be said to that, but I do think we're not super far off, and the season would have gone better had we. Hey, let's put it to you this way: if we were only going to lose one game the rest of the year, this or the San Fran game was the game to lose. We'd rather lose an NFC game than an AFC game. I know mentally we wanted it to prove. We can win in the cold. We can win on the road. We can beat a good team.
We can. That's just it, though. I know we can. I know it's possible.
We wanted to prove all that, and again, we didn't. I understand that. But mathematically, as far as everything, if we were going to lose one game, which we might lose more, but this was one of the ones. This is the San Fran game, honestly. So I don't mind. I mean, we knew we weren't going to win out. I didn't expect to win out. But we still have the rest of the schedule. What do we have, 5 games left? Do I have that right?
Yeah, 5 left.
Some of these games are tougher than others. None of them are no one we're going to just walk over. I promise you that. But we have a chance. We'll be favored in all but one. Probably won't be favored in the Houston game, but we'll be favored.
I don't think we'll be favored with San Francisco.
We'll be
favored with San Francisco. Yeah, it's at home too.
They'll be favored with San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it right now. The other game that they're not going to be favored in, Houston. Despite records, at Cleveland.
Oh, at Cleveland? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. Jameis Winston can YOLO his way to victory.
You know what? It honestly might depend on the weather, Eric.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it might depend on what they're expecting for weather in that.
Oh no, Jason Stamp saying if we win out, we win. We can still be the 6th seed. If Miami wins out, I think I saw a metric. It's 91% chance to make the playoffs, but that's
Yeah,
a big if.
Yeah, winning out's not going to be easy. That would also mean we won what 8? That would mean we have won 8 of the last 9. Not easy to do.
And
Really would have been nice to get at least one of the Indianapolis, Arizona, or Buffalo games.
Yeah,
really would have helped out.
And keep in mind, we're going to be facing Aaron Rodgers, C.J. Stroud. Is Brock Purdy playing again? I think he is. Jameis Winston, whatever, and then Aaron Rodgers again. Like, listen, Aaron Rodgers, for as bad as the Jets' offense has been, I still have not held out the possibility that he will suddenly become vintage the moment he faces the Dolphins' defense.
Aaron Rodgers is freaking, I'll keep it friendly, cooked, bro.
No.
The man is cooked. I'm not worried about him. I'm praying that it is Aaron Rodgers and that they don't decide to put in Tyrod Taylor.
Oh my
That's
God,
where I'm
Tyrod
because that guy's a Dolphin killer
with the playoffs on the line.
Yeah, please just leave Aaron Rodgers in. The man is cooked. Too many days in a dark cave. Too many weird drugs. Whatever it is, he's done.
Please don't beat Tyrod Taylor week 18 in the Meadowlands for the playoffs.
I'll cry. I will cry if we have to play that guy. I don't want to see him, man. Dolphin killer for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the best one to face is Stroud, and it's in Houston, which is
that's a tough game. That's a tough game.
There you go, another opportunity for a big game. A big game.
Oh, absolutely, winning team on the road. I mean, it's probably not going to be quote unquote real cold, but everything else, all the other factors.
I mean, Texas gets cold, man.
Good quarterback.
Texas, I just got back from Texas. It's going to get cold.
They play in a dome. It'll be 75.
Oh, okay. It's in a dome. Okay, well, whatever. Whatever. Then maybe we got a shot. All right, we're about at the halfway mark. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our other sponsor, courtesy of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. We have Underdog Fantasy.
Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players by just selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money, so turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. They have 2 promotions going right now. Vulture Protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry, and they get vultured, we will rescue your entry. Red Zone Rush. A game you won't find anywhere else. Just pick whether or not a player will score a TD by swiping right for yes or left for no. Simple as that. Plus, your entry will be automatically boosted, and you'll get a 51% profit boost when you play. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog. With their Champs game, you can win money by making entries with your favorite players. Download the Underdog app today and use the promo code 3YARDS. That's the promo code 3YARDS to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quickly take the floor here just for a few minutes because there were some things that I wanted to bring up, and we kind of touched on it a little bit during the show already, but I just want to emphasize some certain things. I was live tweeting. I can't live tweet anymore, but I live tweeting as much as I could during that Packers game, and pretty much everything, all my frustrations came out in the sense that, Ron, we talked about it already. And I know that to some extent you kind of agree now, but you still kind of don't. I'm talking about players who are physical, but not just that. Miami needs to be bigger. I'm dead serious. Like, I don't even care anymore about whether they have more of an attitude to them. Like, everybody's so small. Like the tallest guy on offense is like 6'2". That's not okay. Like, I think that's what is it? Jonnu is like 6'3", and I think he's the biggest guy on the offense, like who's not an offensive lineman. So you have a problem here. Like you talked about, why don't we take shots? taking shots and trying to go for those PI calls, which was actually talked about on Twitter. And I think I actually do agree. I think it was actually Omar, believe it or not, who brought this up. I agree with him on one thing. You need guys who are actually going to go up there and fight for the ball if you're going to go for a PI kind of shot deep down the field, because you need guys who in double coverage can still fight for the football, and then they can scream and claim, I was interfered with. But you need the guy who's actually going to be able to do that. If both of the corners are taller than Tyreek and Waddle, who are the shot wide receivers, you're not going to be able to fight that much. And so I know Tyreek is willing to fight, but it's not a question of whether he's willing. Is he capable? He's not capable. So I need guys who are bigger. I need big receivers, not just big ones, though. They have to be good. We had a big one in Claypool. He's trash. So I don't need just size for size's sake. I need a good receiver who is 6'3" or more. I just now saw, I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but there is one wide receiver rookie who just flipped to FSU. I'm not saying that I don't know. You just look for bigger guys. Indade is bringing up Jaden Higgins. I'll have to look up these guys because I don't do college most of the time. In fact, I know that just got screwed over for the I don't know. I don't want to say objectively worse because I have a Bama fan in here, but Bama just got the nod for the playoffs over the Hurricanes, even though their loss ratio.
Happen?
Yeah, it finally. Yeah, well, of course it was going to happen, Ron. It's Bama. They can't take Bama out of the playoffs. It's like college football law.
Bama keeps knocking out teams out of the playoffs that they probably should. And I like Bama. You know, I do.
You're a Bama fan.
They probably shouldn't be, but I don't know, man. It is what it is, I guess.
But that's why I don't get involved in college. I don't have a horse in the race because it's like, what's the point? If I don't like one of the top teams that the committee always picks every year, then there's no point in me getting excited. They're not going to pick me. So there's no point. So with that being said, there are a lot of good young wide receivers coming out this year, I'm sure, who are in the Eric's already rubbing his hands together. I want guys who are bigger, who Tua can throw those jump balls to. Remember when Devontae Parker was here? Do you remember? I'm not saying Devontae Parker was a good. I don't know, man.
I pulled my hamstring remembering.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I remember when he was here. I just don't remember his hamstring being.
I mean, how do we feel about Devontae Parker now that he's gone? I don't know, man. I just feel like he was one of the only guys.
Sucks.
He was one of the only guys. He was the only jump ball guy we had, though, and sometimes it worked. It was again,
we've seen Hill go up for plenty of jump balls.
But
I don't think that's such a big deal. I just think.
But you know what? How about this?
Because when teams are going to play if their game is going to be okay, we're going to throw these crossers in the middle. That's going to be the game. Okay, so you're going to bring the linebackers up a little, so you're going to stop the run, and you're still going to play too high safety. Then we're gonna cross you in the middle all freaking day. Want to get sneaky and bring a safety down? You have to start making them pay for that. One way or the other, or they're gonna stop our offense again consistently. It's gonna start having trouble.
Ron,
like last year.
Does a taller receiver catch the crosser that Tua missed Tyreek on against Green Bay?
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
But that's the point. Again, the catch radius. It's like, yes, they can stretch and they can do acrobatics, but these guys are still small.
So you add a tall guy, you add a jump ball guy, whatever.
It helps,
whatever.
Ron.
Lots of teams have them that suck and have shitty offenses.
So I think we're talking around something, and I've been thinking about this. This is a take I've had in the holster for a while now, and I'm just going to break it out here. It's not going to happen as drastically, but the wide receiver market is going to crash similarly to the running back market. And here's because if I can draft a Malik Neighbors, a Ladd McConkey, a Marvin Harrison Jr., a Roma Dunze, a insert stud rookie receiver, these guys are coming out better and better every season.
Yeah.
Why would I pay my wide receiver $30 million a year? Unless it's literally Justin Jefferson. And I love Tyreek. I do. I love Tyreek, and I really like Jalen Waddle. But you can get 80% of their production, 90%. You could get 100% of their production this year for like a sixth of the price, a fifth, a sixth of the price. And that's where that's the biggest thing that I think might hamstring the Dolphins going forward as far as roster construction goes, but that's for people above my pay grade to worry about. I think we're kind of talking around the fact that, like, hey, listen, you can find a Brian Thomas in the first round who's going to make $6-7 million a year for 5 seasons, and the Dolphins are here paying, now 30-year-old Tyreek Hill 30 plus for the next 2 years. And I love Tyreek. He's been so good for the Dolphins. But, I'm kind of looking around and I'm like, maybe that might not be the best, allocation of resources.
But you have to consider, Eric, just because it is now doesn't even mean it was 2 years ago. We watched the NFL they just go through phases, and you see teams start to kind of follow patterns because of what teams are doing on offense, what teams are doing on defense, and what players are more available through the draft any given year or period of time. So we are going through a period of time now where you're right, that makes sense. But maybe 2-3 years ago, we either didn't know that or it didn't yet. And they had a chance to get a guy who was who we thought most people thought, including McDaniel, that was an untouchable guy that you could get. So I get why they jumped on that, especially given the fact they just brought McDaniels. But now you're right. Now maybe it is time that we could go ahead and just draft one of those guys and add them to the team, and we'll keep Waddle. And, maybe it's a guy with more size. Maybe it's not. I don't know. It just depends on who's available. I agree, though. But I think it trends in drafting and what's available and everything goes through ebbs and flows every few years in the NFL, just because the NFL is a constant evolution of design and play calling and player mix. It just is.
I mean, that's fair to say, but I feel like it's not necessarily a recent trend. I feel like since you had the Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, that draft class that played really well as rookies, I feel like it's kind of been a thing ever since then, really. Obviously, you've had some hits, some misses in between there, but for the most part, I feel like it's been a thing
I think it's the first that I think the last few years it's just been deeper to find those guys than you could before. That used to be there was 2 of those guys, and now it seems like there's 5 or 6 of those guys the last few years. I don't know. Next year, I don't know what the wide receiver looks like. It could be dry next year. It could be 1 or 2 dudes, and that's it. I'm not sure. You just never know. Some years are like not the year to get this player, or not the year to get that kind of player, et cetera, depending on where you're trying to draft. It's hard to know. I think Miami's really close. I think a lot of the things we're talking about, even though we're not the GMs and we're not quote-unquote professionals, I mean, I'll be willing to bet we're right on 85% of it, because it's funny you always hear about, what do you fans know? What does the media know? Blah, blah, blah. We're the professionals. We know, but every single time you see GMs and coaches get fired, they get fired for all the crap, all the fans that don't know anything and the journalists that don't know anything we're talking about for 2 years. That's the way it always works, and it'll be no different this time.
They'll
need to do most of the things we're talking about if they want to have success. If they don't think so, well, then show us you're the pros and figure it out and do it your way and figure out how to win. But so far, Mike McDaniel is 1-15 against teams with winning records, and the one win we had, I don't think we got a touchdown in. I think it was all field goals. So there you go, at home against the Cowboys, who
they got 1 touchdown in that game.
Yeah, what?
They got 1 touchdown in that game.
They got 1? Okay. So I think they're going to need to do those things in the coming off season, but I would guess the question is now, because we still have 5 games, do these guys have it in them to win out and make the playoffs?
And here's where I'm going to talk about the last thing that, at least this is the last thing that was bothering me, especially with the recent rumors that have been spreading. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just go ahead and make this a point to say, I am not saying this as a report. I'm trying to basically say that it's very unsubstantiated, that I have nothing to back this up on. I have no information whatsoever, one way or another. No, my hunch is that it's wrong. My hunch is that it's a bunch of baloney, because quite frankly, and I know that there are some very respected people out there in the Dolphins Twitter sphere who are also kind of not confirming but also not denying these rumors. And for me, quite frankly, I just feel like it's a bunch of crap, because if what you're doing is you're trying to get people to watch your show, cool. Awesome. I respect the hustle. You're spreading lies, but I respect the hustle. This report came out that the Dolphins were abandoning Mike McDaniel and buying out of the entire McDaniel era. And the reason that really triggered it was because McDaniel was shivering in the cold in Green Bay, and he was huddled next to the heaters in the locker room. And I when I heard that, and I actually had people coming at me in my mentions talking about how, well, it's real because in today's NFL, that kind of level of toughness is a real shivering. Ladies and gentlemen, you learned this in biology in school. If you guys remember this, shivering is a natural body function where the body is trying to create motion to warm itself up when you're freezing your tail off in the frozen tundra. I don't want to hear about Mike McDaniel. He's shivering in the cold. You got what? And none of you would? Are you kidding me? Even these guys who are out there with no sleeves on, by the way, you don't think they're shivering when they're just kind of standing there for a few minutes? Are you crazy?
You can only beat biology with biology. What Mike McDaniel has to do, he's got to get a little extra padding going. He's got to get 30, 40 pounds, heat himself up.
There you go. Fat
Right.
Mike McDaniel. That would look funny.
And by the way, and Eric, I'm glad you brought this up for me because there were some people who had also mentioned, well, back in the old days in the NFL, like, oh, they were tougher. They could handle the cold. Like, man, you want to talk about old players talking about whether it was cold or not. I'm glad you brought this up, Eric. Here is Michael Irvin on Twitter back in 2014 saying, hey, when it was cold, it was cold. It's cold out there, man. It matters. Yes, people get cold. It's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. What are you freaking talking about? Like, are you serious? The locker room is abandoning Mike McDaniel because he's cold? At that point, I really don't know, man. It looks like they're just looking for any and every excuse.
I just can't get down with Twitter anymore, man. I just can't.
But think about this. Like, how do you come up
on there?
with
but honestly,
stuff?
I don't even go on there that much. I really just stick to the Discord chat there and the OnlyFans. Not to do that as a promo, but that's where I do 98% of my Dolphins talk anymore. Is there? I just can't get on Twitter anymore.
Like if you want to get mad at Mike McDaniel, get mad at him for not committing to the run. Get mad at him for ignoring the offensive line. Get mad at him for some questionable play calls. Teams are kind of
selling out, but I guess my point is teams are selling out. The Patriots were completely selling out to stop the run. I mean, they just were. And teams are starting to really they've decided to, okay, well, we're not going to just let them run on us 150 yards every game and keep the ball 10 minutes a clip. We're not going to win that way. So they've come with a new adjustment, and Miami's going to be throwing more than running likely unless a team decides, well, I don't know, we don't want these 15-yard crossers on us all day. We're not going to win that way. We feel we're susceptible there, so we're going to trust that we can just stop we could stop the run by not, crowding the line as much or something. And then in that case, it'll be up to Mike McDaniel and the offense to run the ball more to pull them off of that. You got to just we all said that Mike McDaniel couldn't change the way he play calls, and he proved us wrong. You guys remember I went
briefly.
Not briefly.
No.
Permanently. He has absolutely changed the way he play calls games because he's adjusted to what teams are doing for him. You guys remember I went on this big rant about he's impossible. He can't change his ways. I say a guy that's pulled himself out of the crap that he has in his personal life is absolutely capable of changing his ways with play calling, and he's proven that. And Tua, is there any more question that Tua isn't an elite quarterback? I understand that he's not Josh Allen and doesn't have that physical, body to do that. But as far as sitting back in the pocket and spinning the ball, there's almost nobody doing it better in the NFL right now.
It finally happened. It finally happened. He became exactly who we thought he would be.
Yeah, he is that guy.
He is Drew Brees.
And I will say that
he is Drew Brees.
He is Drew Brees, and he just doesn't have the full resume yet to do it. And I will say this: there was a time where Tua needed McDaniel, and then it became a time where they needed each other. And I'm starting to kind of feel like Tua might be outgrowing McDaniel a little bit. And I say that because the team, even though Tua is playing as good as he played, 350-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 80% or more completion. That has happened 5 times in NFL since 1999 where the team lost. 5 times, including Tua's on Thursday night. Yeah, Tua's outgrown McDaniel maybe a little bit. Maybe he has. And I think one time, and it was almost like an after show time. Lewis, it was the week you were really sick and you couldn't do the show. Me, Eric, and Chad stayed probably talking more after the show, like 30 more minutes, like we did more show. And somebody, I know it was me, it was either Eric or Chad, said that maybe Mike McDaniel's not the guy, but he just needs to be the guy next to the guy. Like maybe he's always just going to be. So I'm just not sure if McDaniel's the guy or not, as much as I really like him and like his offense. But I don't know that Tua needs McDaniel anymore. I'll be honest with you. He needed him before to get to this point, but I don't know if he needs him now. I think Tua's figured it out. And I don't know what's for the future of the team. I don't know if they'll fire McDaniel. I think that these next 5 games that we keep avoiding talking about, as far as can they win out and get to the playoffs, that they might be a determining factor for the future of this team. But I believe this team needs to have Tua. I think if we moved on from Tua, that would be a mistake.
I think that McDaniel is not growing as fast as Tua. But
Tua's
McDaniel
gone past, man. I'm telling you, he's outgrown McDaniel. He really has outgrown McDaniel, in my opinion.
But
I know that sounds weird to say, but he has.
I don't like this is where I get this. I don't like the idea of getting rid of people who, for the most part, have been successful. No, I get it. The winning teams, the winning teams we struggle against.
I'm not going to be crying if they don't fire McDaniel. I'm honestly hoping they keep him another year and that he
don't mind. Listen,
figures it out by doing the things we were talking about in the first half of the show.
I will be honest with you. I wouldn't mind keeping him around for a few more years. If he can continue to put together winning seasons and we are in playoff contention every time. And again, I can't imagine that Tua's going to get concussed every single season that he plays. As long as he just stops doing dumb things, he'll be able to stay healthy. Tua's getting hit. It's just his brain that's having issues. So I know that sounds horrible. It's only his brain.
I mean,
but
having Tua
he's not getting
you have to
knocked
invest
around.
more. I mean, it means you have to invest more in QB2. You just have to. It's part of the package of having Tua. It's an absolutely you showed that now because you've pretty much almost thrown away the season by not doing that. But Eric, we've talked a lot. What you would you like to add in there, sir? I've been talking for 10 minutes.
I mean, my whole thing with the McDaniel thing is, and I'm sure Lewis will disagree with me on this, but it feels like the growth curve is kind of going in the opposite direction. You overachieved in year 1. In year 2, you played about to expectations. In year 3, you're underachieving. And obviously the Tua injury plays into that a little bit, but I think that the offense, as we saw in the first 2 weeks, would have struggled at the beginning of the season a little bit. No matter what, they probably would have caught their footing earlier, sure. But you're looking at a situation where, I mean, the adjustments it feels like they're being made too late. At times, it feels like a lot of the same issues are coming up, like the procedural stuff.
That seems to be that goes into the point where the players get in their heads in these big games because we seem to get rid of those for a long time, or they almost evaporated, and then we get into a big game, big situation, important game, and suddenly they start doing it 3 times in a drive again, like where we were 8 weeks ago.
Right, and again, Mike McDaniel doesn't have to be this guy, and you hit on it really well. Who's the guy that really inspires confidence when things go wrong for this team? Who is everybody going to collectively look to?
Let's rephrase. Who is the screamer? Who's the guy who yells at everybody?
Well,
we don't have one.
I don't think Calais Campbell yells at everybody. They just he just gives off an aura of leadership, and
so does Armstead, but he doesn't yell at everybody. Like you need somebody,
you
need everybody who's going to get the adrenaline pumping, and they start to feel like this, and now they can go out there and they can just go ballistic. But they don't have that guy. They have a calming presence. They need an uproar kind of presence.
I think it just depends. You need somebody that can calm down these younger guys when they get like Malik Washington. He starts making mistakes and things like that. You need people that can do that. That isn't always a screamer. And it's honestly, it's just a guy you like kind of know it when you know it. There's really no formula for it. There's not an application you can fill out or a resume, that you can hand over on paper that says it. You just kind of know it when you know it. And these guys just instantly take leadership because it's natural to them. It's organic to them. I don't know how organic it is for Tua. I don't know that it is.
Yeah.
I just not sure that it is. I kind of felt the same way about Tannehill, that it wasn't real organic. It always felt very forced when he tried to be quote unquote the leader. It just kind of is what it is right now. It's just how the team's made up. Doesn't mean we can't win, because we've seen them win quite a bit with it. They're just missing some of this stuff. Just these little things that make a big difference. And teams come in and, hey, NFL teams, they miss back in the college days when 6-7 weeks a year they got to just roll over inferior, lesser people. In this case, they kind of get up to play Miami because they feel like, hey, it's fun to go out there and just bash the crap out of people, intimidate people, and push them, feel like they're pushing them around a little bit. And I've seen on defense tries to push back. You see it in a lot of places. I see
Not
them
lately.
trying to push back, but in that Green Bay game, I didn't see that.
I didn't see it in the last game either, Ron.
I
really
really
didn't
see that. So.
And by the way, for talking to Eric, this kind of nixes your point just a little bit. But all the talk about tackling Josh Jacobs ran for 44 yards.
Yeah,
that was actually the only time he hit his under on Prize Picks.
I get your point there. But I guess I'm if you look at we can talk about the other running backs, Chris Brooks, Emmanuel Wilson. Those are big guys too. It doesn't have to be Josh Jacobs necessarily. I just want a guy that, if he's carrying the ball from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, by the time the fourth quarter comes around, the defense is making business decisions when it comes to tackling that guy. That's what I want. And right now, the Dolphins don't have that guy currently. That's the only thing. I mean, I would take Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I would take Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. Either of those two guys, I think, would be really, really solid additions to the offense. It's not necessarily not about Josh Jacobs per se, just about somebody that runs with a physicality that's going to make the defenders feel it trying to tackle them.
Well, if we're going to do that, I kind of feel like it would behoove me not to at least try this.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're talking about dudes who are bruisers, let me just take a quick look here. Because I don't know what just happened. It disappeared. Just for the sake of argument, Najee Harris is an undrafted free agent next year. A.J. Dillon is an undrafted free agent next year. You know who else is an undrafted free agent next year? Nick Chubb. You know who else is an undrafted free agent next year? Javonte Williams. There's
unrestricted.
Unrestricted. It's UFA, unrestricted. This is what according to Spotrac. J.K. Dobbins, unrestricted again. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Amir Abdullah.
I think it's smart too, because I don't know that the Dolphins are going to spend a third year in a row of a top 3 pick on a running back. I mean, they traded up to get Jalen Wright, so I just don't know they're going to do it. So if they're going to add a guy like this, it'll be through free agency.
And out of all those names that you mentioned, give me Javonte Williams. Obviously didn't.
I remember when we all wanted to draft him.
We all wanted Javonte Williams.
Man, we all wanted to draft him.
He's still going to be what, 25, 26 next year?
He'll be 25 next year.
He'll be 25 next year. It just feels like the perfect kind of buy low move guy that's going to be J.K. Dobbins, what J.K. Dobbins is on the Chargers this year. That's if we're looking at free agents, that's where I would go. Javonte Williams.
A lot of these guys, I think listen, I don't watch a whole lot of other teams unless they're playing Miami. I got to admit, I don't have time for that kind of stuff. But a lot of these guys on this list, their reputation is to be bruisers. Is Najee Harris considered a speed guy, or does he punch? Like, Ron, you would know that question.
Yeah, but he's been as a college player, that dude, and I got to be really close to Najee. Not close as in we're friends, but close as in distance. And I think I was like about 8-9 feet away from him at the was it the Citrus Bowl? I think it was the Citrus Bowl. Yeah, against Michigan several years back. His year before he went. Man, that dude is ginormous. Like he looks like I thought he was he's like the size of a linebacker. That's a big dude. He's been a little underwhelming in Pittsburgh, but that doesn't mean he couldn't fill that role. But I agree with Eric. I like Williams because it's gonna have to be a guy we're not gonna be able to spend a ton of money on. And
I mean,
and I think
for the
Najee's
record,
going to be a little expensive, even though it's still on reputation. He might be a little pricey. Chubb's interesting because he's coming off the big knee surgery, the big knee injury, I should say, from last year.
He'll be 29 next year.
Yeah, but he hasn't looked terrible. That's kind of interesting. I don't know what price you could get for him, but I agree that they need that guy. But here's the thing. Again, I kind of want to get back to this because we keep going to the offseason like we're at week 19. We got 5 games left, and we got to figure out how to win those games.
Ron so desperately wants to talk about the Jets. Listen, we're already in an hour.
I'm not trying to talk about the Jets. I'm just trying to talk about, in general, the rest of the season. This is all stuff that's not going to happen this year.
Ron, the season hinges on Houston. It hinges on Houston. If we beat Houston, I'm not worried about anybody else. I'm dead serious about that.
Here's my thing. And the reason why I'm already talking about the offseason is we've already said it. Let's just be as honest as possible. Over the course of one of these next 5 games, something is going to go wrong within the first 5 minutes. Something. And we've talked about it. I don't know if the team has the mental toughness to overcome that. Now, they could win 4 out of their next 5, but I just think it's going to require them to play pretty much a perfect first quarter over the next 5 games. And I don't know if you're going to get that. That's the hard part for me, is because I know as soon as one thing goes wrong, they're going to let it snowball, and they're going to have to play out of a big deficit.
I'd be interesting to go back and see, because I hadn't really paid attention in the games that they've lost. It does feel like it starts to kind of unravel early, and then they try and recover and can't quite recover. Because I'm not sure, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm probably forgetting a game where we got mollywopped. Okay, the last Buffalo game. Right? Both Buffalo games, didn't we? No, not the last Buffalo game. We were really close in that. The first Buffalo game, we got worked. But mostly, we don't seem to get our tail kicked for 4 quarters in a game. Feels like at the beginning of the game we do, and we've had a lot better second halves this year than first halves. And Tua, many times, has been much better in second half than first half. And the defense has been better second half and first half. Something's going on that, man, they're just building this stuff up too much in their head. They're too nervous about it. They're too edgy to go into the game. There's something up there for sure, and they struggle to settle in early. I agree with you, Eric. Maybe simplifying some things on offense would help. I don't know how you fix it on defense, but on offense, simplifying some things, maybe the first drive or 2 might be helpful, even if they're not the most successful drives. Just let people get into the rhythm of the game.
And I think it goes a little hand in hand offensively and defensively. I don't want to let the defense completely off the hook, because I think that they absolutely need to be better in those situations.
Yeah, especially 20 missed tackles.
But
well, so you need to be way better.
I think one of the things that gets lost in, and I hate that this is going to just become an anti-Mike McDaniel second half of the show here.
He's the head coach, though. I love Mike McDaniel. But
he is. Let's just call it what it is. When they're trailing, the play calling is really bad. They will be down 3, and he will be calling the game like they're down 30. It results in a lot of quick 3 and outs, and then the defense is on the field for the majority of the quarter, and they have to stop, the opposition 3 or 4 straight times, and it just becomes a war of attrition at that point. And that's where I think you really start to see kind of some of the unraveling happening.
Earlier in the game.
Yeah, earlier in the
second half, he seems to be calling better games.
No, absolutely. I just want to see him stick to what works in one possession games. You don't need to get everything back all at once. I think I was doing, actually, the last game that I was kind of analyzing was actually week 17 against Baltimore last year, when they lost 56-19. You know they led 10-7 after the first quarter?
No, I don't even remember. Once 1 year starts, most of the last year just goes out of my head.
They on the first two drives, they passed the ball 7 times, ran it 6 times. They get the ball back with a 10-7 lead. From that third possession through the end of the half, they call 14 pass plays, 5 runs. Like where does the balance go at that point? I need to see a consistency there from him. That's part of the I think that's a big part of the problem is he's just kind of inconsistent when it comes to these things. And that could be something that he learns as he grows. I fully acknowledge that. But man, the learning process, how many games are we willing to let that kind of affect? I think that's a valid question, while he learns these things. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that.
I feel like I know the answer, and the answer is something that isn't going to be solved this season. The answer is, quite frankly, you need to have confidence that your offensive players will do the job. If McDaniel is putting the ball in Tua's hands, it's because he trusts Tua to get the job done. He trusts Tyreek and Waddle. He does not trust his offensive line to get push with the running backs, and that's part of the problem.
In the tougher situations.
Yes, that's a lot.
When,
And even in the not tough
better
situations,
teams.
Ron, because they haven't been running at all. So this is where I feel like you really want to be able to have confidence that your line's going to get the job done. Go get better players. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Go get some guards.
But
Seriously.
I think I said this before the season even started. People always talk about Miami doesn't invest in the line, and I quickly correct everybody. Wrong. Miami doesn't invest in guards. They will spend money on tackle, center, and just say, Lewis and Eric, guys doing anything this year? Cool. Right guard, left guard.
Listen, if
do something.
If they pay me $1 million to go pretend to play guard, I'll go do it. Like
they're paying people a lot more than that to pretend to play guard right now, Lewis. So let me just tell you.
There you go.
let's be honest. Sorry, Coach Eric, but
I did see an interesting exchange on social media from it's one of those YouTube guys that does the film breakdowns. I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm sure you guys know Brett Coleman.
Yeah, I like Brett Coleman a lot.
And there was a back and forth somebody was having with him, and basically at some point he said something like, "Oh, Tua's just on the Sean McVay arc, and in a year or two, both of his guards will be 350." And I hope that's the case. I really do. I certainly hope that's the case. But time will only tell on that.
If McDaniel learns any lessons, he will do that. All right, we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you all so much for listening. Once again, if you haven't already done so, go to thompsoncigar.com, use the promo code 3yards, and you will get 20% off your any order over $75. And of course, you can go to Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you check that out. All the information is in the description, so you go check that out. We're going to end it here. Thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully, we will be back next Tuesday where the Dolphins will have defeated the New York Jets, and we can start working on running the table. Mr. Stamps, thank you for the jersey. I will never wear this again. Don't be surprised if I send a video of me burning it to shreds. All right, that's it. See you guys next week.